Okay, let's dive right into this. Welcome to This Explainer, where we're going to explore one of the absolutely most breathtaking intersections of biology, physics, and engineering. We're talking about the glowing, completely colorful universe that's hidden right inside living cells. Yep, we are talking about fluorescence microscopy. And this isn't just about magnifying things to make them look bigger. No, this is a highly sensitive imaging technique that literally transformed how we study the biomedical sciences. It actually lets us watch the intricate machinery of life operate in real time in just stunning, brilliant color. So here's our quick roadmap for today. We're going to start with the magic of fluorescence, meet the colorful cast of dyes, take a peek inside the microscope itself, explore some advanced techniques, check out the real-world applications, and then finally wrap up with current limitations and future frontiers.
All right, let's kick things off. Section 1, the magic of fluorescence. Imagine trying to find a specific person in a pitch-black stadium. It's basically impossible, right? Well, unless they're holding a brightly glowing neon wand. Fluorescence does exactly this, but at a microscopic scale. We're relying on a physical phenomenon that's mapped out on what's called a Jablonski diagram. Basically, when a special fluorescent molecule, which we call a fluorophore, is hit by a photon of light, it absorbs that energy and jumps up into this excited state. But it can't stay there forever. Almost instantly, we're talking picoseconds here, it drops back down to its ground state. But here is the really cool trick. During that tiny brief moment of excitement, it actually loses a little bit of energy as heat. I kind of like to think of this as paying a tax in heat. Because of this energy tax, the photon it eventually releases when it drops back down has less energy than the one it originally absorbed. And that specific change in energy, that's known as the Stokes shift.
And this brilliantly illustrates why that Stokes shift is such a game changer. Because of that shift, we can pull off an amazing optical trick. High-energy light has a short wavelength, like blue light, for example. But the lower-energy emitted light has a longer wavelength, like green light. So, because our tiny molecule absorbed blue light but emitted green light, we can use these precise optical filters to completely block out the massive blinding flood of the incoming blue light. That lets us only look at the tiny, beautiful glowing sparks of the green light. It's literally how we visually separate the input from the output.
Moving right along to Section 2, the colorful cast of dyes.
Now, of course, most cells don't just naturally glow on their own. We have to introduce them to a colorful cast of characters. These are fluorescent dyes that are specifically engineered to target different cellular neighborhoods. Just think about this incredible multicolor capability for a second. Because different fluorophores emit completely different colors based on their specific wavelength, we can mix and match them. We can use DAPI, which binds strictly to DNA, to paint the cell's nucleus a brilliant sapphire blue. And at the exact same time, we can use FITC to highlight specific cellular proteins in emerald green, and then drop in some rhodamine to make the cell's power plants, the mitochondria, glow ruby red. By combining all these, we're simultaneously mapping out multiple distinct structures inside the exact same living specimen. It is literally like having a perfectly color-coded map of a busy, bustling city.
But honestly, the absolute biggest leap in labeling didn't even come from a chemistry lab. It came from the ocean. Back in the 1990s, scientists actually cloned the Green Fluorescent Protein, or GFP, directly from a bioluminescent jellyfish. This was a massive, Nobel Prize-winning revolution for the field. Why? Because it meant researchers could take the DNA instructions for this glowing protein and literally attach it onto the gene of any biological protein they wanted to study. They essentially genetically programmed living cells to build their own tiny internal flashlights, making them glow from the inside out. That meant we could finally watch live cells going about their business without having to kill them first.
All right, Section 3, Inside the Fluorescence Microscope. Let's move to the hardware and see how this all builds together. Think of the fluorescence microscope as this highly engineered stage that's designed specifically to capture the spectacular performances of our fluorescent dyes, while totally ignoring all the heavy stage lights. We can actually trace the journey of a single photon right through this machine. First, an intense light source, like a laser or an LED, fires out broad light. Second, that light hits an excitation filter. This acts like a super strict bouncer, only letting the specific wavelength we want, say that blue light, pass through. Third, that blue light hits a very special mirror that directs it straight down onto the sample. The sample gets excited and glows, sending green light back up. And fourth, that green light passes through a final emission filter, which guarantees absolutely no blue light sneaks through, before finally hitting a highly sensitive digital camera detector. Now, the absolute unsung hero of that entire optical pathway is step 3, the dichroic mirror. This thing is the ultimate microscopic traffic cop. It's engineered at a precise atomic level to do something that honestly sounds completely impossible. It actually reflects short wavelengths, acting like a solid mirror to bounce that intense blue excitation light down onto the sample. But for longer wavelengths, it acts like a perfectly clear piece of glass, letting the faint green emitted light from the sample pass straight up through it and right into the camera. Without this genius, wavelength-selective one-way mirror, fluorescence microscopy as we know it simply wouldn't exist.
Next up, Section 4, Advanced Imaging Techniques.
So once scientists perfected that basic setup, they obviously started asking, how can we see deeper? How can we see sharper? Well, the classic method is wide field microscopy. It's super fast, and it bathes the whole sample in light all at once. But if you have a thick sample, like a whole piece of tissue, all the glowing parts above and below the specific area you're looking at make the image incredibly blurry. So what's the solution? Confocal microscopy. Instead of bathing the whole sample at once, a laser scans it point by point. But more importantly, it places a tiny physical pinhole right in front of the camera detector. That little pinhole acts like a blinder, physically blocking out all that blurry, out-of-focus light from above and below. What you get is a perfectly crisp, paper-thin optical section. And from there, you can just stack them up and build perfect, highly detailed 3D models of cells.
Now, what's really interesting is how specialized these advanced techniques have become. For instance, if you want to know if two individual proteins are physically touching, we're talking down to a few nanometers here. We use FRET. It acts as a sort of molecular ruler by measuring how energy transfers directly between two dyes. Or if you want to see exactly what's happening just at the surface of a cell membrane without any background noise at all, TIRF uses a clever physics trick to generate a tiny wave of light that only penetrates a few nanometers into the sample. And if you really need to peer deep inside living intact brain tissue, two-photon microscopy uses pulsed infrared lasers that can push straight through the tissue without scattering. That lets us peek deep inside living organisms like never before.
That brings us to Section 5, Real-World Applications.
So what does this all mean? Why does all this complex physics and optical engineering matter outside the laboratory? Well, because it actively saves lives, it helps discover new drugs, and it's decoding the human brain as we speak. In hospitals right now, a technique called FISH uses glowing fluorescent probes that bind to specific DNA sequences to diagnose specific types of breast cancers and leukemias by literally lighting up the chromosomal abnormalities. In the pharmaceutical industry, high-content screening uses massive automated fluorescence microscopes to test millions of potential new drugs against glowing disease cells, letting us see instantly which ones actually work. And over in neuroscience, researchers are using special dyes that flash bright green whenever calcium levels spike. Since calcium spikes right when neurons fire, this lets scientists actually watch the electrical circuits of the brain light up and communicate in awake, living animals.
And hey, if we want to watch whole organisms grow from a single cell, we turn to light sheet fluorescence microscopy. By shining a literal sheet of laser light in from the side, we can scan samples at just breathtaking speeds. We're talking hundreds of 3D volumes per second. And because it uses such an incredibly thin slice of light, the toxicity to the sample is surprisingly low. This lets researchers sit back and watch entire embryos develop over days in pristine, real-time 3D without ever harming the delicate living tissue. It's just wild. Finally, Section 6, Limitations and Future Frontiers.
So the crucial point is, while this is an absolute modern marvel, we're still ultimately bound by the laws of physics. Even the most powerful optical microscopes out there face some really strict, frustrating boundaries. Let's look at the drawbacks. First off, there's photobleaching. If you leave a fluorescent dye in that intense laser light for too long, the dye chemically breaks and permanently fades to black. Then there's phototoxicity. Hitting living cells with intense lasers creates free radicals that can actually damage or even kill the very cells you're trying to study. Then you've got autofluorescence, where the natural tissues themselves just glow on their own, creating this annoying background noise that totally ruins your image contrast. And of course, let's not forget, these are incredibly expensive, highly complex machines that require massive amounts of computing power just to handle the data they generate.
But, as you might guess, scientists don't just accept these limits and give up. For the longest time, classical physics said it was literally impossible for light microscopes to see anything smaller than half the wavelength of light, which is about 200 nanometers. It's a hard, physical limit called the diffraction barrier. But scientists looked at that and asked, how do we push past this? How do we see the unseeable? And they answered that exact question with relentless human innovation.
They invented super-resolution techniques like STORM and PALM. These use really clever chemical tricks to turn individual glowing molecules on and off, one by one, allowing computers to pinpoint their exact location down to 10 nanometers. That completely shattered the classical limit of light. And, get this, if you can't build a better microscope, why not just change the sample? There's this mind-bending technique called expansion microscopy. It takes the biological tissue, infuses it with the exact same super-absorbent polymer you'd find in a baby diaper, and physically inflates the tissue like a water balloon. By making the sample physically larger, regular microscopes can suddenly see incredible, nanometer-level details that were previously totally invisible.
So at the end of the day, fluorescence microscopy isn't just a fancy tool, it's a gateway. We have taken dark, invisible, chaotic cellular goop and turned it into a vibrant, multicolor, highly structured universe that we can watch unfold in real time. We're breaking the absolute limits of light and literally inflating tissues to reveal the deepest secrets of biology. So the question I'll leave you with today is this. With these glowing molecular flashlights at your disposal, what hidden universe will you illuminate next?